It's the Practical Prayer Podcast live recording session on New Thought Media Network. I am Bill, that's Carol over there, and welcome to you who are joining us either live now on New Thought Media Network and the various tentacles that it has through Facebook and YouTube, or watching the recordings later. So it is wonderful to have you here. We're going to chat for a little while before we get started with this episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast. And then we're going to record the podcast, which is going to probably get published in a week or so after it goes to England for editing. And in the meantime, if you have a question or a comment or a suggestion, you can put that into the comments on your social media if you're watching live, or you can go over to the website at bethelight.com, be-the-light.com, just like it says right there on the screen. And there's a section about the podcast on there, and you can put your questions or comments and stuff in there, and we will, as they say, respond accordingly, or take it under advisement, or accidentally ignore you completely. So,
Not me.
it's what I do my best. I do my best. So it is. It's Valentine's week.
Yes. Now, I made a commitment to somebody to do some readings, on the mushy stuff. And for the life of me, I couldn't remember, where am I supposed to get this? My mind just went totally blank. And I remember when I was a real little teeny girl, really young, I watched Wuthering Heights. And I remembered I just would cry over some of the quotes that were in there. And I advise anybody, never let your kid watch that, because love ain't that way. It just is not. But it was really sweet, and I just found quotes that I'd forgotten, and I said, I could do this. It's really cool. So I credit Spirit for jogging my memory.
Thank you, Spirit.
Yes.
Thank you. That the infinite mind is willing to share what we need exactly at the perfect moment.
At the perfect time.
So, yeah, and I got into New Thought probably after I'd been married for 10 or 15 years. And that was after inadvertently getting married on Valentine's Day.
Nice,
we were just looking for a Saturday in the middle of February, and it happened to be the 14th. And it's turned out since then to have some meaning. But also some stark contrast. Because Valentine's Day is about chocolates and those, like, the little candy hearts that will, chip your tooth.
Yeah.
and slightly naughty Hallmark cards. And as I believe Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name is going to be half the price on Thursday.
Yeah. I love it. Yes. How about that? Well, you listen, that's how I shop for Christmas. Like the day after, you can get twice as much.
Yeah, there's some magic in there, but so it's the whole idea of turning our attention and our awareness to love, and that's what you describe as egoic love, and as opposed to unconditional love or divine love, which is different. And in the intervening years, from not noticing that the 14th of February was going to be Valentine's Day, to having that as my anniversary, to being all about divine love and unconditional love. It's like I've got the Neapolitan ice cream of perspectives on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, as you were talking, I thought, why am I so whatever? You should have thought of a subject that had to do with Valentine's Day. Everybody else is probably thinking about that. And,
well, we're talking about it in the pre-show, but this is actually the podcast episode is going to be the week after Valentine's Day.
Oh, good. Okay.
And that's like stale chocolates and like wilted roses, so we don't need to do that.
Got you. So we should have did it last week, right?
Or we're doing it right now. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody who's on New Thought Media Network. You caught us in exactly the perfect moment. And hopefully the podcast episode will wind up being evergreen.
It will.
Which means, that means somebody can... we're 140 episodes in, and if somebody wants to binge listen, they find us for the first time, and they listen all the way through, they're not going to hear them like on the dates that they were recorded.
Right, right,
So,
right.
and some of them were particularly dated, and some of them are, well, anytime you call them evergreen.
I like that idea. I never thought about binge listening. You know, I'm going to tell people like binge listen.
I had a friend who found the podcast and then started listening backwards, starting at like episode 110 or something, and was listening backwards as you became more and more controlling.
That must have been interesting. Yeah.
So I have not. I've listened mostly forward. Yeah, sometimes when the weather's nice, I'll go out and ride my bike and listen to an episode. Or sometimes two.
Yeah.
But that's me. So we're going to talk about the third step in a
Yes.
practical prayer, the realization step today, or the affirmation, as it's sometimes called. So, and I am just, I'm eager to get into it. So, you want to go ahead and get started?
Yes. Yes.
On your mark, get set, podcast.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
And you decided in episode number 140 of the Practical Prayer Podcast that you want to focus in on the third step of a practical prayer, really fine-tune in on that.
Yes, yes. I often, this is like something in vain, you can never do it, and in terms of deciding what attribute of our walk or practice is most important. And I usually come back to faith. And so when I go through the 5 steps, I get to realization and I think, you got to have some faith here, you know, when really you have to have faith from the very beginning. But when you
Well,
get
you need some
here,
faith just to get started with the whole thing.
Yes, yeah.
Could this
Yeah.
work at all?
Is this worth it, or do I trust this guy who wrote this book? You know, I mean, come on.
Please. No. Don't trust me. Do not, under any circumstances, believe anything just because I said it or wrote it in the book. That is not the reason to believe it. The reason to consider it is because there's some pretty good stuff there. But decide for yourself. If this works for you, then work it. And if you do it for a while and it doesn't work, then do something different, because there's a mismatch. But you know,
Listen,
prove it for
that's-
yourself. If it works for you, then you get to use it.
that's a lot. But there are people like me. We look up the guy or the woman who wrote the thing.
Okay.
You know, I want to know who's talking to me.
All right,
if
well,
you
you're
did
in the right place
consider-
for that.
Yeah, well, if you did considerable homework and you've got all this around you that shows that you're really into it, okay, you're not a flash in the pan. Let's go. I'm going to listen. You know what I mean? You don't swallow anything that anybody says, hook, line, and sinker, but I consider the source.
Yeah, and I would hope that in the years that you have known me and we've been working together, that you've had some prayers that worked so spectacularly well that you go, this is not working because Bill said it works. This is working because it works.
I don't get into all that. It works.
It
You know,
works.
I mean,
Yeah.
I met you. You were doing this. I took the class. I tried it. You know, I mean, it took me a long time. So anybody who's out there, you know, if it takes a while, we're starting from different places.
Right.
And so I had to undo a lot, not just in terms of the order and what components are in the prayer, but what I thought about or believed about. Also, it takes whatever time it takes. But I think you gotta trust, have faith. Okay, God. Here's the other thing. I asked God for a teacher. I gave.
And
Okay.
you did. You did.
Long story short, you showed up. I did a little look around. Let's go. That's the way. And you can always, you don't have to worry about poo-pooing somebody if it doesn't turn out right. Fire them. Just get somebody else.
Yeah.
But
And sometimes
turned-
spirit has a sense of humor. Because you told God to find you a teacher, and you're thinking Carlton Pearson, and there came me.
Oh goodness, that's so interesting. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay, offering what we have to offer, and the good comes about. So let me, because we're talking about the third step in a practical prayer, so let me go through the basic 5 steps that are in a practical prayer, so that we can identify them by purpose rather than just by number. And the first step in a practical prayer is to turn our attention to the infinite, to look at the big picture, the divine power and presence, the creative essence that creates everything. It's called recognition. So recognizing that God is all there is, and that everything that exists is that divine presence showing up in its own way. The second step is the unification step, which is where we identify that because everything everywhere is God's presence taking different form, that must be true of me as well. So that's why it's the unification, because, okay, there's this huge power and presence, this creative operation that's going on, and I'm part of it. And what that does is it reminds us that we have access to that same creative power. So then from that place of divine awareness and authority, we get to the third step, which is the realization, which is where we are calling for the newness that we wish to invite into our lives. And once we have claimed that newness, and that we're using the creative power that created, the entire universe, galaxies, planets, everything, we're using that same power to create this new one. Bring something new into our real experience of reality. Mm-hmm. And once that's happening, there's a step of gratitude, thankfulness that goodness is coming about, thankfulness for the awareness and the ability to use the process. There's gratitude in any form. And then the last step is release, where we speak our word and let it go. Kind of like planting a seed, because we don't want to hold it in our mind. It's not going to take willpower to make it happen, because in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And nowhere does it say that God had to go back and replace the bulb or check to make sure the light was still shining. It was like, let there be light, there was light, it was done, and that's the release. So that's the last step. So the third step is the realization. And you do need to do the first 2 to get into the place where you can do that realization step and have it be different than an affirmation. So an affirmation, you can do an affirmation by itself. I am prosperous, I am loving, I have perfect relationships, I am healthy, whole and complete. Those are all wonderful affirmations, and they work right up until we don't believe them, and then they stop working. And actually they keep working, but they work by what we believe rather than what we say. So by taking it into that prayer process, we are partnering with the infinite to claim that newness in our lives in a way that goes beyond what we've experienced so far. So that's enough of my reestablish. I will now allow you to talk more about what you wanted to talk about as we talk about the realization step.
Well, that was a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's
But it's episode number 140, and unless somebody is starting to listen backwards from here, we've covered this once or twice.
But I'm carefully saying this. This probably takes like a lifetime, really, to not understand it, but sort of, because it's so much. I was listening to you talk about each step, each component part, and I thought, wow, that's like so, you could just go forever talking about turning our attention and da-da-da. You could just has so many parts to it. But let's get over to the realization. You talked
Yeah.
about affirmation. So
Right.
how does affirmation differ from realization?
That is the difference between self-help and new thought. Because in the self-help, all right, something's wrong with my mouth today. Do a little prayer for that. In self-help, we create affirmations where we call upon the infinite to create something new in our lives. But we start with the affirmation. Here's what I want to have in my life. I'm claiming I have my perfect loving relationship. I have a fabulous job. I get good grades in school. And those are very powerful. At the heart of it, that's the active ingredient in a practical prayer, and a very effective prayer, and the most effective prayers that have ever been done in history, in every scripture and everywhere that you can find thoughtful, insightful, uplifting, powerful spiritual stuff. The affirmation is whatever comes after I am. I am love. I am loved. And it's really powerful. And it can be transformative, because if we go along not knowing what we want to have happen next, then we say, I am joyous. There's no reason in the world that joyousness isn't available to us, and suddenly things start happening to us that make us feel joyous. The times that doesn't tend to work is when we believe that we were born under a curse, that there's some dark cloud following us and there's no possible way that we can ever be joyous. And what we believe is that there's no joy available in our lives. And then we say, I am joyous. And we still have to carry our umbrella because this downpour of misery is all around us. And it is what we're believing in that's important. And if we're believing that there's going to be that downpour of misery, then saying I am joyous doesn't help. So an affirmation is just claiming something in the midst of it maybe not being true, or maybe not believing that it could be true. And a realization is actually the third step in a prayer, where we've gotten past all of that stuff first.
So do we no, okay, do we address we have to address what we believe. We should address what we believe. Nah, I know. Don't use should. Okay. It's wise.
The antidote to should.
It's wise to address or think about the little thought thing there about what we believe before making the affirmation. But now the realization, we come to that and say more about that.
If I have this belief that there's, and we'll continue with that I'm doomed to a life of misery. So the first thing that happens is I notice that I've been living a life of misery and I don't want to have that anymore. And that's what we call the pivot, where we say, okay, instead of misery, I want to have maybe I want to be a bully. Maybe that'll make it go away, but probably not. What we do is we come to realize that the experience I want to have is to be joyous and have peace of mind. So we start by turning our attention and our thoughts away from the experience we've been having that's been miserable and awful, and we open to the possibility that we want to have instead. Now, we know that it's possible for there to be people living joyously because we've seen it. Mm-hmm. So the way that we get ourselves from the place where we don't believe it can be available to us, even though we know it's available somewhere, is that we acknowledge that there is one source of everything. That divine creative power that creates everything, that did its number to create the planets and every particle and subatomic particle, every person, every place, everything is that divine essence showing up in a different way. And we've seen that it includes people who live joyously. Mm-hmm. We know that's the nature of the universe. That's the recognition step. And in the second step, we say, since that is possible, it's got to be possible for me. I'm part of that same divine creative presence. So that good that I'm seeking is actually possible for me. So now, instead of thinking about how miserable my life has been, I'm thinking about how joyous and peaceful and harmonious my life could be, and I'm claiming that I am part of the creation that can have that. And then I get to the realization step and I say, this is mine now. I am joyous. And it's not just me. It's that entire creative process, that 14 billion years of bringing everything together. That's the power that's bringing this joy into my life, not me thinking that my umbrella is going to be strong enough to keep the deluge of misery out.
Okay, so while you were saying that, like I was following through with maybe some things that I had done prior to understanding this, so I kind of, fit it in or overlay it. And I thought, okay, so I kind of look at something and say, I want that. I want to do that, whatever it might be. Done it a million times in my life. And if it looks like it's really impossible or whatever, I would just say, well, if one person on the planet did it, I can do it.
Yep.
I'm doing this. Now that's just attitude. But what you're talking about is something
That's step
much
2 with an attitude.
Yeah, I guess.
In step 1, you're saying, hey, they've got it. That means that it's possible, it's out there.
Yeah, I mean, why shouldn't
And
I?
step 2 is, yeah, why can't I have that? That's unification. Okay, there's a creative power that can create that goodness. I want one.
Yeah, I might think of, and I can think of several times. I'll say, okay, well, I might have to work a little harder, or I might have to go this way or go that way, but I will, I'll have it or I'll do it. And if it takes a little longer, fine, or it's not going to take as long because I don't have that much time. So I've got to, so I'll just wiggle around in that and just go, right? But what is that affirmation or realization? And if so, is there an easier way to say it without attitude? Because some people will say, well, I'm not like you. I don't have that kind of faith. I'm not going to say it's not faith. It's just that I just figure God doesn't hold out,
Yeah,
Doesn't
and you've gotten to that place yourself, and that's the process. That's how come we can do 140 episodes so far, still counting, of the Practical Prayer Podcast, because it is really, really simple to explain. It is not easy to do. It is a very, very personal process. It's the most intimate relationship that we have, which is the relationship with our Creator, whatever it was that created us. That divine power that's not just inside of us someplace. It's everything that we are. You say, what's a tree made of? And the tree is not made of wood. The tree is wood. We're not made of spirit. We are spirit. We are the divine creative power and presence taking form. And all of that good that we're seeking is available to us through that channel. It may or may not be available because we got attitude and we tell the world around us how it's got to be. You are, I believe, shorthanding it because you're doing a lot of this stuff. A lot of this process is at this point innate in you. You understand your nature and the nature of the infinite. So you can start with what seems to you to be attitude. I'm going to have this. And because you have that relationship, that understanding of where you are in that creative power and that creative law, you can start there and just continue in through the realization and claim you're good. Other people are starting in a different place.
Okay, so I want to, because I think I'm starting with where you say, like step 1, 2, and 3. Maybe I was doing it and just didn't know it, but it's because of 1, 2 that I have attitude, I guess you could say. And it's really not attitude, well, yeah, but confidence.
Okay.
Because
the people around you think it's attitude. That's probably where the label came from.
Probably. And I think like this. Okay, I'll stop for a minute when things are hard. I can't see it, but it's there. Just give me some time. It's there, and because I just know spirit. I just know God. No other way. Then I'll tell myself I may not see a way, but I know there is a way. And if that is the case, it'll come clear. I mean, I'll say things like, I know I'll find it, but let's just be honest, I ain't that great. I'll just, I'll do the best I can and then wait and trust that the smoke will clear. Is that the realizations or no?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily follow the steps. There are two other steps that come after. When we make that bold realization claim, where we say, I am prosperous, and the little voice says, the credit cards are maxed out and the bank account is overdrawn. That's our disbelief. That's our doubt speaking. And when that comes up, that's the time where we say, there's no truth to my value is not judged by my bank account or my credit cards. I am prosperous, and all good is flowing to and through me, and make that claim again. There's no power that poverty has over me. It's an infinitely abundant universe. All of this good that's available is available to me, and I'm claiming it now. And we change our belief by doing that.
Now,
and you have your own process of changing your belief, and that's great because it works for you.
so is that the realization?
It's the one that you end with. Actually, it's the last affirmation that you say, that you don't get a yeah but or an objection or a doubt in your mind. That's the realization. When we realize that what we're saying is the truth. That the claim we're making, that the intention that we're setting, that the imprint that we're putting upon that creative power is actually underway now. That's the realization.
So would it be fair to say that our experience in life will assist us in the faith or, the tenacity, the belief that the thing is going to be okay? Because I'm thinking about, like you talk about me like, I've done it a million times. I probably have. But I look at or landmarks in my life where I've been at a critical place, and I might think, okay, where was I when I was in a difficult place before?
Mm-hmm.
And go find that strength, the words that I said or the feeling or something, it just, especially when you're in a place where you can't really see, because sometimes when you're in it, you're just like messed up.
Right.
So all of that is before you get to the end, because I'm thinking, okay, for instance, a couple of times in my life, I needed to get out of something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, okay, God, we out. It's always been, I don't know where this is going. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding you. It's like, these are the words. I'm out. We're out. Don't know where this is going, but it's always been me and you. Let's go. Those are my almost exact words.
Yep.
And never has failed me. Now, is that realization?
That's a realization with a leap of faith. I don't know where I'm headed, but I'm heading somewhere good. And I'm letting go of what I had before. You were the trapeze artist who has just let go of the bar. Something's going to happen.
Yeah, could there have been a part that says it can be worse than this, right? Or I don't really care.
Yeah, never say that.
Yeah,
this is an
could
infinite
be.
universe because it could, no matter how bad it is. It's like, really, this with flies? God, who'd have thought?
So I guess I'm trying, because I don't have an example. I just know what is, and I don't have the words to articulate it. So I'm trying to get you to do it for me.
Okay.
No surprise there, right?
Yeah. Well, let's take a break, and then when we continue, we will have a little bit of a discussion about a one-step practical prayer and how that's different.
Okay.
Are you ready to get results? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. Are you ready to get results? RUR2GR. That's actually the abbreviation for the steps in a practical prayer. Recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release, with a couple of extra steps in there in case some doubt creeps in along the way. RUR2GR. This class is about the prayer technique that's common to all of the spiritual practices and religions in the most effective prayers that they have. And by effective, I mean that the prayer works. It actually creates a change in the experience of the person doing the prayer. It gets a result. We're going to begin with theory, and then we're going to take it into practice. By the end of the class, you will have your very own practical prayer that will help create transformation in your life.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony. I wanted to add something, so that nobody feels situationally. It's not just about relationships. It could have been about an experience that I wanted to get out of, not necessarily relationship, and that might have happened too, but, so that we can all feel like whatever your situation is, it could fit in this when you want to make, this huge change.
Oh yeah, it works for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite things to pray for includes doctors scratching their heads and apologizing because the original test results couldn't possibly have been accurate because there's no evidence that this disease ever existed. I'm completely okay with that, and I, on more than one occasion, have prayed that experience into into the scenery around whoever the prayer was for. So yeah, the prayer is for health, it's for prosperity, it's for relationships and connection at all different levels, whether it's with our beloved or with our work colleagues or the government. It's about our creativity, the spiritual practices. It works for everything. It works for everything.
So we could do this in one step?
Yeah, people notice, like if you read the New Testament, Jesus goes around doing a lot of blessings and prayers and working miracles. And he very rarely does these 5 or 7 steps that we're talking about. He says, Lazarus rise, and the dead guy comes up and says, oh, were you looking for me? And that works, and it's because Jesus was absolutely sure of who he was. He knew that he was a child of God. He knew that he was an expression of the infinite, and that he was wielding that divine creative power that creates everything. He also knew that we all were. He said, all this I do, you can do, and more. But because he lived in that awareness of the first 2 steps, that there is one creative power that creates everything, he knew that he created him, and that he was wielding and using and expressing and embodying that same creative power. He didn't need to do the first 2 steps. He could say, Lazarus rise, or fig tree go away, and boom, it happened. And he lived in a space of gratitude and thankfulness. So in that single step, he would state his realization and let it go, because he knew it was the truth, and it wasn't going to hang on to it. It's not going to be him doing it, because he knew it was the infinite creative power that was doing it. So in that single step, it's the realization, the release, and it's done. And every once in a while, I can do something like that. Somebody will ask me to do a prayer for them, and I'll just look at them, and it's like, it's absolutely clear in my mind that whatever it was that they just asked for is happening, so it's done. And I describe it again in those words, and then they come back a week or a month or 2 months later, and they say, hey, this thing happened, it was wonderful. And I'm thinking, didn't you already tell me this? Why did I already know that? Oh, I know. It's because I saw it when you first asked, and I did that 1-step prayer. It was done. And you're just getting the newspaper delivered now. So that stuff works, and the 1-step prayer can work. But what happens is, if we have been living in that experience of having misery fall upon us all the time, and we get to believing that misery is what we're about, then that's our belief system. That's what's active. That's where we're activating that creative process. We are claiming, I am miserable. And the creative law is saying, yes, you're miserable. And we don't need to acknowledge that that's what's going on, because it's not like there's a different creative power that creates something when we don't know. The nature of the natural universe is that there is one source of everything, and it has created everything, and it's created us. that's really not open to interpretation. And we can trace our way all the way back to the Big Bang, and every atom and every molecule and every element, every bit of energy in your body, in your experience, in your existence came from that one. There's no place else it could have come from. So we are all that one, taking that's individual form. That creative process, which we can see has created some pretty cool stuff, has created us. So to whatever extent anybody can create anything, that's the power that we're using to create. Even though we sometimes think we can push things around and force them and manipulate them and manage them. And give me a wrench, I can make this thing better. But that's the process that we're using. And it's when we forget that we need to start with the first two steps to get ourselves to the point where we're open to believing a new realization. We're open to believing something different. It's about changing our beliefs, not just using the words, I am loving. Even though I keep on kicking the dog.
Okay, so
Did that straighten anything out?
Yeah, I think we need about 3 more episodes, but but
Good to have a plan.
but the I have a plan here, but I rarely stick to it.
I think you stick to the plan very well, and it's me who draws us off the straight and narrow every time.
As long as it works.
Okay.
So it is what we believe, really, that needs some attention.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we believe is what, can we say, empowers the energy or allows the power to either flow or not?
What we believe is basically directing the creative power. And it happens whether we understand what we believe, whether we're aware of what we believe, or whether what we believe is so subconscious and so ingrained in our personality we don't even know it's there anymore.
Gotcha.
You've done gardening, you go out to the nice marigold seeds and you plant marigold seeds and you water them and you smile, and then there's a whole bunch of weeds. Like, where'd those weeds come from? They were in there. You want the marigolds, you got to deal with the weeds and make room for the marigolds.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So in the practical prayer, we are not always aware of the weeds until we get to maybe step 3. Is that fair?
Sometimes we go through a whole bunch of cycles where we become aware of the weeds when we set the intention to have, and I'll continue with the marigolds. We have the intention to have marigolds, and we go through the entire process, the whole prayer, and we're planting marigold seeds and knowing that that's the good that's coming up. And then what shows up in our life is a lot of weeds and maybe a couple of marigolds. And we look at that and then saying, oh, I'm a failure. We say, there was something else in there. Let me fine-tune the prayer and do it again and clear out some of the weeds, to clear out some of that disbelief that I can't have a wonderful garden full of marigolds. Because I can, there might be something for me to let go of. And certainly if I've been getting my marigold seeds from somebody who's mixing them with weeds, like the drug dealers that are cutting their supply or whatever, I gotta change the process somewhere to make sure that what's going into the soil is what I actually want to be harvesting or cultivating for later. And sometimes it's a single process inside the prayer, as I realize that, I have this disbelief that I can have this goodness. And sometimes it's a longer process because, I want to have a wonderful, loving, committed relationship. And I get into a wonderful, loving, committed relationship, and the person I get into the relationship with doesn't like me doing some of the things that I really enjoy doing. Oh, well, she doesn't like camping, so in order to spend all of our time together, I have to give up camping. Well, maybe that's not what I meant. Maybe I didn't want to give up camping. So we have to fine-tune and set the intention that this relationship includes camping and recreation and the other things that are important so that we can get to that experience of uplift. It's not a one and done.
Well, I think it's like a lifestyle. I think you have to, it's a good idea to include it as a part of your life because it's like you keep perfecting it,
Yeah. Well, you've given me a prompt. We're going to take a break, and when we continue, we're going to do a practical prayer to understand what we believe.
Get inspiration in an instant. God calls are the gentle and uplifting moment of truth to help you remember that the bright light of God's love is shining right now as you.
It's your God Call with Reverend Bill.
Start your 2-week free trial today, and you'll get a phone call 4 times a week from Reverend Bill with an uplifting half-minute message filled with insight, wisdom, story, and fun.
Let your light shine.
You can answer the call to listen to it live or let it go to voicemail so you can hear it later. After the free trial, your subscription is just $5.95 a month. The details are at godcall.org. God calls are disruptive, intentionally.
Whenever you write something, put on a gold star.
They take you away from your routine to remind you about the truth of who you really are. They come at random times between 8:15 a.m. and 6 p.m., so you won't be expecting them. And somehow, the message is exactly what you need to hear at the time.
Magic is loose in the world.
It's a moment of motivation in the middle of your day. Find out more and start your 2-week free trial now at godcall.org.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We're talking about the realization step in a practical prayer, and the fact that you can do a prayer that's just that one realization step. And it doesn't really matter what you're claiming if what you believe is something different. So what we're claiming in that realization step is, this is the good that I'm inviting into my life. But if we believe that we don't deserve the good that we're inviting into our lives, or if we believe that we're going to be experiencing something different, we will not get what we are praying for. We will get what we believe we deserve. So that seems mysterious, especially since we have this subconscious, which is something of which we are not conscious. So, and that's where our beliefs live. They're actually active in our subconscious. That's where the creative law gets activated. So the good news is, if there's something that's in our subconscious, in our belief system, and we don't know what it is, there are a couple of ways that we can be informed as to what it is. The first and most obvious, and kind of hit you in the phrase of being hit by a spiritual 2x4, is your life experience is a topographical map of your belief system. If we believe something, it's going to show up in our life. And everything that shows up in our life is because it's part of our belief system. Things that don't fit just don't show up. But that it can be difficult to see how all those pieces fit together. So sometimes we can go along for a whole long time and something just hasn't been working for us, or it's been a challenge or a difficulty, and then suddenly we go, oh, I never thought it was possible for that to be different. Or it never occurred to me that these people and those people could get along well. Or, fill in the blank. There are so many things where there's something that we just didn't have a concept of. And we had a belief that it had to be the way that it had always been. And however that got in there. So let's do a practical prayer on, what do I believe? And the other way to look at that is clarity. How can I have clarity about what's going on in my belief system to make room for me to choose something that I prefer? Now, it's possible that everything in my belief system, everything that I believe, is serving me wonderfully. And it's nice to know where it came from and to settle into that goodness and to invite in yes, please, and more, overflowing. And sometimes we can use that to say, this is something I am ready to let go of. This is something that, for whatever reason, got in there. I learned it, I believed it, I accepted it, and I've been living by it, and I don't need it anymore. It's time to let go of it. So that's going to be the prayer today. So as you're comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes, if it's safe to do so. Go within, become aware of that divine power and presence that is within. And if you're not able to identify that divine power and presence within, consider the possibility that there is a divine power and presence within. One source, one creator that has created everything. It's the one in Scripture that said, let there be light, and there is light. Because it said right before that, there was darkness and void, and God. And God said, and God was all there was. Everything else was darkness and void. God was there, and God said, let there be, and now there is. And that same story, as told in the language of quantum physics, is the Big Bang. And suddenly there was this enormous field of energy that took millions of years to cool down to the point where it could start creating matter, atoms. And those could evolve and create and unfold and reveal themselves as all of the different elements that we have that can then combine into molecules and then form life and then form us, then form our experience. It doesn't matter what the story is, it is the same. That one is sharing itself, expressing itself, revealing itself, and unfolding itself as every part of its creation. That's all there is. And knowing that that is all there is, I know that that must be what I am, what each one who is listening to this prayer is. We are that one taking our own particular form. And I say particular because all of the particles that make us up, all of the energy that make us up, is that one. We are that divine presence taking particular form as us right here and right now. And everything that we're experiencing, everything that we're aware of, everything that's going on in the outside world and the world within is that one infinite intelligence, that one divine presence expressing itself. So that infinite mind, that divine creative power that knows how to create this entire manifest universe, is part of us. It's within us. All of that wisdom, all of that insight, all of that knowing that's available anywhere is available everywhere. It's available right now as and for and through each of us. So I invite an even deeper awareness and clarity of what do I believe? What is the way in which those beliefs have been bringing about the experiences, the ones that I love and enjoy and cherish? The ones that have been challenging or difficult or that I wish to move beyond? What are those beliefs that I have had? We don't need to understand where they came from. We don't necessarily need to understand all of the implications. Simply the awareness, the clarity about what I believe and how it's been showing up in my life. And we can then move on to that next choice point of what do I wish to experience next? More of what I've been experiencing, or in a slightly different flavor, a different direction, or something brand new, complete transformation. And it's all available. It is all possible. So I claim that goodness. I claim that clarity. I claim that understanding. And I claim that transformation to what's new on behalf of each one listening now. That good is underway now. And I'm so thankful for it. I'm thankful for the good. I'm thankful for the willingness of each one to take part in this process, to consider something newer, bigger, more expansive. I'm grateful for the courage to go beyond what has been and open to something new. And I'm grateful for the awareness of this creative process that has created everything. I'm grateful to know it's now creating this. And so with a deep feeling of thanks for all of this good and more still coming, I speak this word and I release it into that creative law that has created everything. And know it's now creating this. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That is episode number 140 of the Practical Prayer Podcast.
That was good.
I like that one. That prayer was expansive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the whole episode was good.
I thought so.
Yeah.
It was, it was like a work episode to me.
A work episode?
Yeah, like it was detailed.
Oh yeah.
I felt like it was really detailed.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I always love it when I wind up like doing the beginning of time and the Big Bang as part of the prayer, because for me it's very grounding, but it's like that's going back. That's the all-time greatest hits.
I try sometime to go to the Big Bang, I guess because I don't have a real good frame of reference for it. So I go to In the Beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's like in the beginning. It's just whatever was there, that was it. In the beginning, God. So now you got God. Let's go from there.
All right, I have a recommendation for you. This is actually the current class that I'm teaching is on Living Untethered by Michael Singer, which is a wonderful book. It's a follow-up to the Untethered Soul, which was like 15 or 20 years ago. And he spends, I think, 4 or 5 chapters talking about the Big Bang and where this all came from. I mean, in such rich detail. It's like every atom, he explains, like, this is where the helium came from. This is where the hydrogen came from. This is where the iron came from. This is where the gold came from. And all, the gold fillings, the potassium that's in our bodies, the calcium that's in our bones, this is all manufactured in the stars. There's no other place it could have come from. And he traces that down. It's like, okay, so everything that we are is that.
You're tethering my soul, Like, I don't really, it's good. I believe you. There are people that are much smarter than me that got all those details together. Got you. I trust you. God.
Get the book, read those 5, and they're very short chapters. They're like each a couple
I
of
will
pages.
get it because you're the teacher. You recommended it, so I will do that.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay. And I'm teaching a class on that one. We're I think we're at week 3, and it's really rich stuff. And I've been through the book a couple of times, and every time I look at it again, there's something that's ooh, ah. So I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do in class tomorrow night because the students might watch, and then it would spoil the surprise. Yeah. So thank you, Carol. Thank you to everybody who is watching and listening on New Thought Media Network, live and in the recordings. We're here on Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern, which I guess is 11 a.m. Mountain Time, which is home to the network. And as always, thank you. Very provocative conversation. Yeah.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.